Hey everybody, welcome to Workforce Gaming. We're here today to talk about Tron Identity. So Tron Identity is a visual novel from Bithell Games set in the Tron universe. It is basically just a very straightforward visual novel. Lots of talking, lots of trying to figure out what's going on. And that in of itself I kind of want to start with because this makes this just such a weird game in my mind because when you think Disney, you always think these big tentpole movies, big franchise games. You think your Jedi Survivors, your Guardians of the Galaxies, your Marvel's Avengers games, just these games that are trying to be these giant things that are live services, huge games. The Guardians of the Galaxy game, just giant narrative focus. And this is a licensed Disney game in 2023 that is a visual novel that is 2 to 3 hours long by Bithell Games, who have done just a bunch of really cool indie stuff. Thomas Was Alone, Subsurface Circular. They did the John Wick game a couple years ago to kind of be their next biggest thing other than this. And it just feels weird because I don't feel like we normally get these types of games with this size of an IP. Even though Tron's not Star Wars, it's not Marvel, it's not any of those big IPs, it's still Tron. It's still something. So it's just such a unique game. It's such a weird game. It's weird that this even exists in my brain before we even start talking about why it is. And I think that's why I was kind of so drawn to it instantly was I'm kind of into visual novels. They're okay. They're not a huge thing of mine, but I like them. I do like Tron a lot. And it's just this weird thing that kind of just drew me in. So I guess to kind of start with, the story of this is basically you are a detective on the grid, a member of the Disciples of Tron, who are kind of this independent investigators. Really, your goal is just to figure out what happened. Somebody brings you in and you just say, hey, here is what happened. You don't render a verdict. You don't influence anything. You are just there to say fact 1, fact 2, fact 3, fact 4. And that's it. So that is kind of your basis of what's going on. Now, you get to this building, it's filled with all this data, there's all these different, not even all these different characters, but there's 400 or 500 characters that you interact with who all have kind of different perspectives on this big explosion that happened and what might have gone down to do it. So as you go through, really your goal is just to kind of discover what's really going on here. Is this a terrorist attack? Is this somebody from the inside? Was there something like just some huge revelation, grid shattering piece of information that's here? Was this somebody who is trying to attack these? And that's kind of the start of it. And it gets a little bit more into different things as you go. The one thing I will say is this is a game for people who know Tron. Nothing is explained. So if you don't know grid, if you don't know users, programs, all of these different things that are kind of the Tron mythos, if you don't know that, the game's not going to hold your hand through it. It starts right away with, you're getting run over by oh yeah, I'm a disciple of Tron. Oh, we all know Tron. Here comes a light cycle. Oh, that light cycle almost ran me over. Well, there's lots of data in here. I wonder what these programs are. Ugh, it seems like the users abandoned us. This grid is going crazy. And all of that is just supposed to make sense to you. So if you don't know Tron, I would probably be a hard out on this, even though I do love this game. I think it does some great things. The basics of the game, again, if you haven't done a visual novel, if you're more here for Tron more so than visual novel, a visual novel is really what it just sounds like. It's just let's read a book, but it's on your TV, or in this case on your Switch. But lots of reading. You get to make some decisions. You kind of get to be query and kind of direct a little bit of where you go. It does a great job of kind of making you feel like you can kind of bounce anywhere in this building, talk to anybody, but there's lots of points where you'll go, I wonder what this character would have to say, and you'll go to the place where that character is, and it'll just be like, oh yeah, you walked into the library, and you look around, and you know something's going on, but there's nothing for you here, and then it just bounces you back out to the location select. So it does a good job of kind of making you feel like you can go anywhere, even though you really can't. You very much have to kind of go down this linear path. Now, that's not to say there's not different things happening, because you do have choices, and your choices do have different outcomes. There's multiple endings. Just one example, I accidentally killed a character really quick when they showed up, just because they were being a little sketchy, and I kind of took more of an aggressive approach to them, and within about 10 lines of dialogue with this character, they were not a character in the game anymore. So that kind of threw me off a little bit, and I went back and played through again and got a little bit more with that character because I was curious about what happened with them. But there are branching choices. There's multiple endings. You do get kind of a flow chart for each character of, hey, you approach this character, and then it'll have, kind of your two branches. One of, you are friends with this character. This character is very off-put by you, and that does kind of affect some of the other things that go on as you go through there. The general story remains the same, but just kind of the way some of the characters interact with you can change. That's it for most of the gameplay. It's just kind of that. There's no walking even. It's mostly point and click, go to this area, look at this thing, talk to this person. That's really it. It just kind of, you pick an area and then it runs through what's going to happen in that area. You make your dialogue choices and we move on. The other thing that is in this game, these explosions have messed with people's memories, or programs' memories, sorry. And in order to do that, Query has the ability to go through and defrag them and unlock their memory, and they can kind of see what happened to this character in different points where these characters might not remember, and that's kind of instrumental to some of your investigations. So how this manifests is as this weird little disc puzzle. So you get a whole string of cards, kind of in a big old circle, and there's different suits, different numbers, and it's basically a really simple matching. You can either match with the card next to you or 3 away. And your goal is just, as you match, one of the 2 cards gets sent out. You match again, one of the 2 cards gets sent out, gets sent out, gets sent out. Your goal is ultimately to get down to somewhere between 2 and 4 cards, depending on the puzzle you're doing. I don't like judging puzzles, but these felt very straightforward, and the only reason I say that is because I made it start to finish through this game without struggling on a single one. And if I'm not struggling on a puzzle, I feel like that means that they've got to be easy, because puzzles aren't my thing. So they felt pretty simple. It was definitely not something that hindered the game, definitely didn't add much. It was just kind of almost a breakup if you're not really into the whole visual novel thing and you're not into reading through this whole game. It's just kind of like, okay, here I can kind of play with something for a second and move on. I think they're timed. I think most of mine were no more than a few minutes at a time. And I think there's maybe 5 that are mandatory as you go through the game. So it's not a huge deal at all. And that kind of brings to my last point that I really like about this is just a quick and breezy game. You are probably in and out of this thing in 2 to 3 hours. And I like that a lot. I think the game does so much better because of that, because you're never stuck in this at all. There's no point where you feel like you're getting into this monotony of this and things are slowing down and you kind of feel like, okay, I'm 2 steps ahead of the game. I know where it's going. I know what's happening. And I think that short length really does that and helps it out there. So again, you're only a couple hours in this thing from start to finish, which always a plus in my mind. The last point I really want to make is just the writing. The writing in this is fantastic. Just the dialogue is so well done. Just, again, it's a visual novel, so it's lots of just flat backgrounds, kind of pictures, just you're seeing something and the words are really telling you the emotion of the scene. It's written so well that you really just get this vivid picture of, in my mind, I almost was like, well, no, I think there was a little bit more going on in those pictures, but there's not. It's just, that's how your memory remembers it because of how well it's written. So the game is just, it's incredibly good. It's incredibly well done. It's incredibly well made top to bottom. It's just such a weird thing that there's a Tron visual novel. Of all the things, I didn't think that in 2023 I'd be really excited and really loving a Tron visual novel. So I do think this has a very specific audience. That is short games, Tron visual novel. If that is you, I think it's a home run. That happens to be me. So I'm a huge fan of it. I loved it a lot. I love it if we could see more stuff like this. It kind of almost feels like Midnight Suns to me, where you've got this weird style and this huge IP that just, you don't feel like they would mesh well together, but they do. They mesh really well, and they kind of combine to make this really cool thing. And I think that's kind of how I felt about Midnight Suns, where it's like, that's what we're doing with these characters as a tactical RPG. That's what we're doing with Tron visual novel, and it's cool to see Disney games just try and make some risks with some of their IPs and try and go out there and go, okay, we're going to give this to people who clearly are passionate about it, who clearly have a good sense of these IPs, and who are clearly really invested in them. And they make good things when you do that. So it's a great game. I loved it. Again, I think if you fit that small target audience, you're really going to like it a lot. But we are Workforce Gaming. We try and get new videos out every Monday. Leave a comment, subscribe to our channel, and we will see you later.